All right, well, let's continue in our series, right? This has been a fun series. Has everybody enjoyed this? Like, we're in Philippians. I hope you have. Like, I have thoroughly enjoyed this series. It's one of my favorite things to do is just to kind of walk through books of the Bible. And I think you just learn so much from the author's perspective of what he has for us. We've been in Philippians, for those that haven't been with us, we're about halfway through right now. I think this is week 5. Of a 9-part series we're doing where we're walking through just the 4 chapters of the book of Philippians. And what we are seeing over the last chapter and a half, because we're about halfway through chapter 2. Today we're going to finish up chapter 2. But for the first chapter and a half, what you see Paul doing is he's really honing in on these 2 major themes that you see in the church. One is joyfulness. He talks about this idea of experiencing a joy-filled life. And the other one is spiritual maturity. That as Christians, as Christ followers, we are called to grow in our maturity, in our spiritual maturity. And he's going to say some crazy things. He's going to make some statements like, "He who began a good work in you will see it to completion." And what he means by that, when he says that, is that God is not against us. God is actually for us. That God's not going to abandon us. He's not going to forsake us. He's not going to leave us. He's actually for us, and he started something really good and amazing in our lives, and he's going to see it to completion because he's for us. And he says things like, to live as Christ, to die as gain. And so remember, Paul's in a Roman prison cell when he's writing this, and so just imagine these Roman guards are coming up to him like, we're going to kill you tomorrow. And Paul's like, awesome, great, I get to go see Jesus, let's do it. Don't make promises you can't keep. And they're like, well, we're not going to kill you. He's like, okay, cool, that's cool too. Let me tell you about Jesus. That's Paul's attitude. Whether he's dying or whether he's going to stay on earth, he is going to proclaim the name of Jesus in all things. And so we see this playing out in this time. Now, I don't know, as we continue this conversation about a joy-filled life and experiencing spiritual maturity, I don't know if you guys have ever thought about this. There's about a 12 to 14-inch difference between experiencing the wrath of God and experiencing and tasting the goodness of God. 14 inches, that's all. About that, right? That's the distance between your head and your heart. That's the difference between you experiencing God's wrath and tasting his goodness. See, here's the thing. You can know facts about God without being a child of God. You can know the book without knowing the author. And one of the things that Paul is doing in this letter, and quite frankly in all his letters, is he wants to connect the dots for us between our head and our heart. And that's what he's doing here today, we are trying to connect the dots between our head and our heart. And one of the ways he does this sometimes is he's going to do kind of what he did last week. He's going to do a lot of what we call doctrinal instruction. It's very formal, very straightforward. Daniel walked us through and unpacked this amazing, amazing message last week. If you have not listened to Daniel's message, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. He did a phenomenal job. Jill actually listened to it this week, and she told me, you need to step your game up a little bit for that. And so I'm like, no pressure. Okay, cool. But he's essentially walking us through these doctrinal statements. He's telling us things like having the same mindset of Jesus, to be one-minded with Jesus. He tells us things like we have to have a servant's heart and we have to have humility, and our attitude needs to be an attitude of positivity, not one of grumbling and whining and complaining. And so we see that playing out. And so what Paul's doing it through doctrinal teaching is he's connecting the dots between your head and your heart. And so what we're going to see today, though, is a shift. Today is not about doctrinal teaching, it's more about testimony. He's going to use the testimony of 2 of his closest friends. These are partners in ministry that he has known for a long time that are both joy-filled, spiritually mature people. He's going to lay out their testimony in the last half of Philippians chapter 2. And in doing so, he's going to connect the dots between our head and our heart. Because here's the thing. Yes, doctrinal instruction is good, but sometimes we can connect those dots by looking at how others are living their life. It's not a comparison game, but when you have someone who is spiritually mature, who is loving, is kind, who is joy-filled in their life, when you look at how they live their life, you can learn things from them. And so Paul is going to lay out today this idea of testimony. Now, you got to understand, there's a difference between biographies and testimonies, right? The world has biographies. The church has testimonies. The world will tell you, hey, this guy came from nothing, man. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps. He's a self-made man. He took this business from nothing, and he raised it up to this status that it is now. And it's all about the individual. It's all about what this individual has done. That's biography. That's not what we're getting here. Testimony is different. Testimony is all about how Jesus shows up in your life. It's all about how he sustains you. He provides for you. He blesses you. He changes you. He calls you into things. And then as a response to all these things that God does in our lives, here's how we respond. That's testimony. There's a difference. It's all about what God has done in your life and how he has stirred in your life. And so what Paul's going to do here, we've got two individuals. We've got a guy named Timothy. You've heard of him, I'm sure. Timothy's been around with Paul for a long time. And then we got another guy who I'm going to butcher his name. It's Epaphroditus, right? Like that's a mouthful. So what I'm going to do, just if you guys are cool with it, I'm just going to call him Bob, okay? So we got Timothy and we got Bob. Like that's the two individuals. You know, when I say Bob, I mean Epaphroditus, just because I don't want to have to say that. But the reality is, these are two men who are joy-filled, spiritually mature. They have suffered with Paul. They have made just immense sacrifices, but yet they still remain faithful. And that's their testimony. And that's what we're going to unpack today. So what I want to do is we're going to walk through what Paul's got here, and we're going to look at their testimony, and there's things that we can learn from them. There are attributes, there are traits, there are qualities that they possess that we're going to look at, that if we take those things and apply them to our lives, it will help us grow in spiritual maturity. And that's what we want to do. If you want to be spiritual maturity, there are certain things that we have to do. And hopefully that's your goal, right? That's all of our goals, is to grow in spiritual maturity. God loves us where we are, but he loves us too much to let us stay there. So he's constantly trying to grow us. It's a lifelong journey that we have. And so what he's going to do is we're just going to unpack what he's got here. All right. You guys ready? Excited? Is that good? All right, let's jump in. We're going to be in Philippians chapter 2. We're going to be starting in verse 19. We're going to go 19 to 30, so we got about 12 verses to cover this morning. We're going to start in verse 19. It says this: I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon. Remember, Paul's in prison in Rome, right? He's in a Roman jail cell. He's literally handcuffed to a Roman guard at this point. And Timothy is this guy that he has been doing ministry with for a long time. And there's this church in Philippi. It's 800 miles away. And what he says is this is a guy, he's a close friend, he's a gospel partner. I want to send him to you right now. He's going to make that journey. He's here with me. He's checking in on me. He's making sure I'm okay. But I'm going to send him to you. But why? Why? Okay, Paul, why are you sending him? So, well, he tells us. He says in the next part, he says, so that I too may be cheered by news of you. See, I don't know if you've thought about this, but there's a way for us to live our lives that when people hear about us, it brings joy to other people. Like when people hear about your life, it brings cheer. And that should be one of our goals, is that when people hear about us, that they're like, man, that is such an awesome person, man. I just love that person so much. And for Paul, that's the church in Philippi. Like that's why he's saying, I'm going to send Timothy to you. He's going to hang out with you. He's going to check on you, make sure everything's good. But then he's going to come back and he's going to give me some good news reports about what's going on, how you guys are progressing in the faith. And that's going to bring joy and cheer to my life. Now watch what he says next, because I love this. Like this is going to blow your socks off, right? Verse 20, he says this: for I have no one like him. I have no one like Timothy, is what he says. Okay, so for you Bible nerds that are here, pop quiz. What was the caliber of people that Paul surrounded himself for ministry? They were pretty strong people, right? I mean, you think about guys like Barnabas and Silas and Luke, the husband-wife team of Priscilla and Aquila. These were rock stars of the faith. These were giants of the faith. This was not JV guys. This was not, 1- and 2-star recruits. These were first round draft pick guys. These were guys that were going to be starters from day one, right? These were big, big names. And yet, in this moment, Paul's going to say, yeah, but Timothy, man, there's nobody like Timothy. I got nobody like Timothy. Man, to have someone think of us that way, that's amazing. To have someone in your life that you think of like that is incredible. Okay, Paul, but why? What's so special about Timothy. What's so unique about Timothy? Well, he's going to tell us. He says, who will be genuinely concerned for your welfare. Underline that phrase, genuinely concerned. It means you're not insincerely, not selfishly. He wants you to show genuine concern, authentic concern. For who? For you, for your welfare. That's what he is. And so, right off the bat, we have to understand that for spiritual maturity, it requires us to be authentic in the relationships we have. We have to be genuine with the relationships we have. There has to be authenticity in our relationships with each other where we have genuine concern for the people around us. How many of you guys have ever been like, hey, you got a friend, you're going to catch up, so you're going to go out to lunch together. And you sit there for 2 hours at this lunch, and then you leave the lunch and you realize that for 2 hours you never said a word because your friend said it's all, they're telling you all about their new job, their new relationship, what's going on in their kid's life, the vacation they just took, the vacation they're about to take, all of this stuff, and it's all about them. They never once stopped to ask you about what's going on in your life. We've all experienced that from time to time. And what you got to understand this morning is the thing that brings joy to the heart of God the most is when his people show a genuine concern and think of others above themselves. That's where he's at. And that's what he's telling us. Throw up the picture real quick. Okay, I put this in for Justin, okay? This was my very first sailfish that I ever caught. He was about 75 pounds. It took me almost an hour to get him into the boat. Dude, this thing took 4 runs, deep runs, before I could get him into the boat. You'll appreciate that. It was awesome, an awesome experience. But what made this so special for me was not the fish itself or even the process or experience of catching it. It was the people that I was doing it with. See, I can tell you right now exactly who was on that boat with me and exactly what they were doing. My buddy Pete was driving the boat to make sure he was dodging all the other boats that were out there and making sure the lines didn't get crossed. I had Josh and Jeff. They were reeling in the other lines to get them out of the way. And John, who's in the picture with me, I don't know if you guys remember, about a month ago, we had some friends from the Keys that came up to visit us. That's him. That's John. John's sitting there. He's putting the harness around my belt to make sure I can get it into the socket. And he's coaching me and telling me, like, hey, he's pulling to the left, move this way, move to the right. And it was awesome because when we got him in the boat and we got the pictures, those were the people I celebrated with. And these were the people in my life who showed genuine concern for me. Like when Josh would look at me and he'd go, hey, Michael, how are you doing? And he looked me in the eye. I knew he meant it. He had genuine concern for me. And I could look at Jeff and say, hey, Jeff, what's going on, man? Can I help you? And he knew I had genuine concern for him. We had a group of close guys that just had genuine concern, and we poured into each other's lives all the time. See, we all need people like that in our lives. You need people who will look you in the eye and say, hey, how are you doing? Like, I know you got this thing going on, man. How are you holding up? What can I do to help you? That's what Paul is saying in this moment. And so we all need people that are going to show genuine concern in our lives. So my question for you this morning is, who are the people in your lives right now that show genuine concern for you? The people that you can call on, you can rely on, that are pouring into your lives. Flip side of that coin is, who are the people that you're pouring into? Who are the people in your life that God has placed in your life that you are genuinely showing concern for those people as well? Because see, here's the reality, and I've said this before. Every single one of us, we need a Paul in our life, and we need a Timothy. Paul was that senior guy that poured into the life of Timothy. And he was constantly discipling him, bringing him up, helping him grow in his faith. And we need someone like that in our life that can pour into us. I don't care if you've been walking with Jesus for 10 days or 10 years. It doesn't matter. I don't care how long you've been doing this. You need people that are above you that are pouring into you. But you also need to find some people that you're pouring into. You need to find some relationships that you have as well. We all need a Paul and we all need a Timothy. Spiritual maturity requires authenticity in our relationships. Let's keep going. Verse 21, it says, for they all seek their own interest, not those of Jesus Christ. So the second point there is that spiritual maturity requires selflessness. And here's the thing. When we talk about genuine concern and genuineness and selflessness, these are like two sides of the same coin. You understand? Like you cannot show genuine concern for someone if you are a selfish person. You have to be willing to look at what's in the best interest of the other person above yourself in those moments. You have to be able to focus on them. I've always been an avid scuba diver. I don't dive as much now because of where we live, but there was a time where I was diving every chance I get. I've dove everywhere from Hawaii to Mexico to the Keys to Turkey. I've got I think I stopped counting at over 200 dives. I love diving. Now, when you start diving, you have to get certified with the basic underwater diving course. And all that does is it introduces you to this new environment that you're in. It's like when you first start coming to church. But then after a while, you can take what's called the Advanced Open Water Course. And what that does is it begins to expand your environment underwater. You can dive deeper. You can dive caves. You can dive shipwrecks. You can do night dives, things like that. And it's really cool. But then there's a third course you can take. It's called the rescue course. It's the rescue course. And with the rescue course, it's the first course you take that's not about you. It's about the other person. It's all about how you can help them out if they're in a bad way. If they're deep down and their tank goes out, how are you going to get them safely up? If they're on the surface and they go unconscious, how are you going to help them out? It's all about helping the other person. And what Paul is saying here is we have to be selfless in our approach. See, one of the things that sets Timothy apart from other people was he was selfless. He was all about what's in the best interest of other people, not what was in his own best interest. And he lived that out. And the cool thing about Timothy, I don't know if you picked up on this from last week's message, Timothy is simply living out the character of Christ. Like, you understand that, right? Like when he is doing this, he's living out the character of Jesus. It was not in Jesus' best interest to go from heaven and to be born into humanity on earth. It wasn't. It was not in his best interest to go to battle and have these confrontations with the religious elite at that time. It was not in his best interest. It was not in his best interest to be persecuted. It was not in his best interest to be beaten and tortured. It was not in his best interest to be nailed to a cross. And it was definitely not in his best interest to die on the cross. But you know what it was? It was our best interest. He did that because he put our interest, our needs above his own. That's why he came. So what Timothy's doing is he's being a selfless person in a selfish world. He's doing what's best for others, not for himself. Like, I need you to understand the secret to being a Christian, the secret to being a husband, the secret to being a wife, the secret to being a parent, a child, a friend, is doing what's in the best interest of the ones you love, even if that doesn't line up with what's in your best interest. Like if I woke up, like when my kids were small, if I woke up in the morning and I said, hey, you know what? I know what's in the best interest of my family, but what's in it for me? How do I benefit from this? What am I getting out of this? Dude, my family would be destroyed in a heartbeat. But if I wake up every morning and I'm like, what's in Jill's best interest? What's in Ben's best interest? What's in Hannah Grace's best interest? Dude, that brings about joy. That brings about cohesion and closeness in your family. When you focus on the needs and the things that are in the best interest of the people around you. See, what you got to understand is selfish people, they're miserable people. Selfish people are miserable people because they never have enough. They're always looking for something more than what they already have. So let's keep going. Verse 22. But you know Timothy's proven worth. Underline that phrase, proven worth. We talked about how Timothy and Paul had been doing ministry together for a long time. If you go to the book of Acts, Acts is kind of a historical book. It documents what's going on in the church right after the ascension of Jesus. In Acts chapter 14, so Paul has at this point been converted, and he's beginning his missionary journeys, right? And he's on his very first missionary journey, and he ends up in this little town in modern-day Turkey. It's called Lystra. Chapter 14 talks about he goes into this town, and he does what Paul does. He begins preaching and teaching the gospel. He's sharing Jesus with all the people, except it's not well received. Like the town begins to riot against him. All these men come out and they literally chase him out of town. And on the outskirts of the town, they start picking up these big boulders, these big stones, and they begin to hurl them at Paul, and they stone him to the point that we're pretty sure he either passed out, was knocked unconscious, whatever, but the text tells us that he was left for dead. And so they went back into the city. And so at some point, Paul wakes up. He regains consciousness. And there he is. He's beaten, he's battered, he's bloody. And do you know what he does next? He goes right back into the town. Like, what? How many of you in that moment after you went through this would literally go right back into the same town to the people that just did that to you? Like, none of us would do that. Matter of fact, when the first rock came flying at your head, probably what you're going to do is like, that's a sign from God that I need to retire. I'm out. Thank you. Good luck. He needs you. But he recognized that these people needed Jesus, and he was committed to Jesus. And that's what he does. So he goes back into the town, and guess what? He stays there a little longer. Eventually, he grows roots and plants a church in this town. And then after he gets it kind of going, he leaves. And years later, he's going to come back on his second missionary trip, and he's going to go right back into that same town. Except this time he rolls into town, and he's like, you know what I really need? Man, I need an assistant. I need like an associate pastor to travel with me. And there's Timothy. Timothy actually grew up around Lystra. There's a very good chance that he was part of the early church that Paul planted on his first missionary trip. And then Timothy's like, I'll do it. Sign me up. I'm in. Count me in. And they're like, okay, yeah, but you know what happened last time. Like this guy got beaten and left for dead. Yeah. Well, you've heard the stories. He's been thrown in jail. He's been, shipwrecked. He's been, all of this persecution has been thrown Paul's way. Yeah. I got it. I'm in. He's like, okay, but understand, like, if you do that, then you're likely, because of proximity to him, you're probably going to have to be tortured and suffer the same fate that he does. Okay, yeah, sign me up. And so Timothy begins this lifelong journey of hanging with Paul and doing ministry, being partners with him together. And he's committed to doing this. See, what you got to understand, spiritual maturity requires faithfulness. Spiritual maturity requires faithfulness. That's what Timothy is doing. So many people in this world will tell you what their worth is. It's a completely different story when they demonstrate their worth to you. See, so many people will say one thing, but then they won't follow through. There's so many people that will have good intentions, but they're not committed for the long haul. This is why at New Year's, when we make New Year's resolutions, there is literally a 12% increase in gym membership. You guys, because make a New Year's resolution, I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to be good. 5 months later, 80% of those have given up their membership. Because there's just something about us. We all have a pain threshold. We all have a comfort threshold in our lives. That there's this time that we hit where we say, you know what? I'm good. I don't want to do that anymore. That's not fun. That doesn't bring me joy anymore. So I'm going to step away from that. But that's not Timothy. Timothy doesn't do that. Timothy is a guy who has perseverance. He's resilient. He's dependable. He's what we call, he has stick-to-itness. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has this discipline that allows him to finish the things that he starts. In other words, he's faithful. He's not perfect. He's just faithful. He has proven worth. Verse goes on, it says, how as a son with a father he has served me in the gospel. I love that because there's no indication in the Bible that Paul had any children. And when we read about Timothy, there's no indication that his father was anywhere in his life. He wasn't. We know about his grandmother, and we know that he was raised by his mother, but there's no mention at any point of Timothy having a father in his life. And I love that that's the language that Paul uses. Hey, Timothy, man, this is like my son. I'm like his father. And I love that he uses this family language because this is God's primary way of describing the church, as a family. Like, you understand that, right? Like this is where we as a church can get this sideways. Let's just be honest. If we try to treat the church as anything other than family, we will get this sideways very fast. If you base the church off, let's say, a business model, or off maybe entertainment, or heaven forbid, some political ideology or stance, we will get this wrong very fast. The church is a family. The language that God uses in the Bible is very familial. God is a father. He's our father. Jesus was his son. The angels were sons of God. We are children of God. Jesus is our big brother. This is all familial language that we use and we find in the text. And here's the thing. In a world of broken relationships, what a blessing it is to have a family, to have a church family that you can rely on. It's a true blessing. And I love that Paul, in this moment, he's basically demonstrating the heart of a father. He's saying, this is Timothy, he's my son. He's like a son to me. He has the heart of a father. See, much of the brokenness that we experience in this world can be connected back to men and people who don't have a fatherly heart. Much of the brokenness that we experience is because people who do not have the heart of a father. And what Paul is saying is that the healing and the restoration comes through people like Paul who just have a heart for the Father. That's why I'm so thrilled when I see things like what Sean Hill's doing with Truth in Nature. Truth in Nature, for those who don't understand it, it's a ministry that basically reaches out to young boys, young teenagers who don't necessarily have a strong father figure in their life. And what they do is through outdoor activities, they step into that role. And these men provide a fatherly figure to these young boys who don't otherwise have a fatherly figure. They just have a heart for God, and they have a father's heart, just the way God says. Let's keep going. Verse 23 says, I hope, therefore, to send him just as soon as I see how it will go with me. And I trust in the Lord that shortly I myself will come also. Okay, so Paul's in prison. Church is in Philippi. He's like, okay, look, I'm really hoping to get out of this situation pretty quick. And if I do, my goal is to come see you guys. That's my ultimate goal. I want to come to the church in Philippi and visit you guys myself. But regardless of my situation, whether I get out of this or not, I'm going to send Timothy to you. I'm going to send him to you. And this is Timothy. Timothy is genuine. He's selfless. He thinks of others above himself. He's faithful. He's dependable. He's loyal. And despite everything that he has gone through, he remains spiritually mature and joy-filled in his life. Look, if you don't know this person, I pray that God will put this person in your life. If you are not that person, I pray that God will move and stir in your heart in a way that will grow you into this person. Okay, that's Timothy. You guys ready for Bob? All right, we're going to shift over now. That's Timothy. Now we're going to Bob. Starts in verse 25. It says this, I have thought it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother. Underline my brother. Notice the family language here. He's still using that family language. He says, and fellow worker. Underline fellow worker. That means they were gospel partners together. They were on mission, on purpose, together, unified in growing and growing the kingdom of earth, or growing the kingdom of heaven on earth. They were in the ministry of gospel together. It says, and fellow soldier. Underline fellow soldiers. It means they shared in trials and hardships together. It was difficult. They sacrificed together. And he says, and your messenger and minister to my need. Underline your messenger and minister to my need. See, when he says your messenger and minister to my need, remember, in a Roman jail, you did not get 3 cots and a hot. That's not how it worked. There was no food for you. There were no provisions made for you. It was all based on the generosity and care and compassion of the people around you that would come in and bring stuff to you. And so what happens here, there's not even like a court-appointed attorney for him. Like, he's just there. And the church in Philippi gets wind that Paul's back in prison. And so they decide, hey, we need to send a care package. We need to do like a little love offering, and we can raise a bunch of money. And we're gonna take this 800 miles to Paul, who's in prison, so that he can be cared for at this time. And it's important that you decide the right person, right? You got to have the right person who's going to be carrying all of that money with them 800 miles from Philippi to Rome. You got to have the right money guy. Remember, Jesus had a money guy. It was Judas. Remember how that worked out? Not so great. Judas was that dude. 1 for you, 1 for me. 2 for you, 1, 2 for me. 3 for you, 1, 2, 3 for me. So you got to have the right guy. You got to have a guy that you can put your trust into. And so that's what they do. How many of you, just out of curiosity, would take this mission? Like if the church came to you and said, hey, here's what I need you to do. I essentially need you to walk from here to Connecticut and carry this big bag of blankets and money. Oh, by the way, you got to go through New York City, so good luck with that one too, carrying money through there. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to do this. Most of us would be out at the 800 miles. We were like, no thanks, not doing that. So they go to Bob, and they're like, hey, will you do this? And Bob's like, yeah, absolutely. I love Paul. I will absolutely do this. Why? Because he was just trustworthy. And what you got to understand is spiritual maturity requires trustworthiness. You will never grow in spiritual maturity if you're not a trustworthy person. So he keeps going. He says in verse 26, for he has been longing, he's talking about Bob, for he has been longing for you and has been distressed because you heard that he was ill. Indeed, he was ill, near to death. And what you got to understand about Bob is this. He was compassionate. Like, there's this point, we don't know exactly when, but towards the end of his trip, he got really sick. I mean, like super really sick, to the point they didn't think he was going to make it. He was near death. And he rolls into Rome, and he's there with the bag of money and the bag of provisions for Paul, and he's giving it to him, but he's so sick he can't even leave. He has to stay there. I think some indications say he stayed for as many as 3 months hanging out till he could recover from this. But notice what he says. He says, longing for you. And then I love that it says, and he was distressed because you heard that he was ill. Like the fact that he had so much compassion for the church in Philippi that it's like, hey, you guys trusted me with this incredible mission, and here I am. I'm no fault of my own, but I got sick, and I might not be able to follow through, and I'm just trying my best to honor you guys and to honor Paul, and I'm doing all this stuff. It actually brought stress on him, the idea or thought that he could be bringing stress on someone else, even though the circumstances were completely out of his control. So spiritual maturity requires compassion. We have to be compassionate. And he goes on, he says, but God had mercy on him, and not only on him, but on me also, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. Verse 28, I am the more eager to send him, therefore, that you may, what? Rejoice at seeing him again, that I may be less anxious. Spiritual maturity requires us to have compassion for those around us. Verse 29 says this, so receive him in the Lord with all, what? Joy. Underline that phrase, all joy. See, what he's saying is like, hey, he's getting better. And it's soon I'm going to send him back to you guys. I'm going to send Bob back to Philippi. And when he comes back, dude, I want you to blow the roof off of this place. I want you to celebrate him in the name of the Lord with all joy. I want you to throw this massive party, break out the piñatas, go buy a cake, string up some lights, go hire a band, whatever you got to do. But you need to celebrate this guy. You need to show respect and honor for what this guy has just done, what he's just endured for me and in the name of Jesus. And then Paul, he has this little extra line. He says, and honor such men. I want you to underline that phrase, honor such men, because Paul ultimately is a teacher, and he can't avoid not teaching a little bit. So he's going to add this little teaching moment in here, and he says, honor such men. And what Paul is doing is he is establishing the environment and culture of the church. He expects us to honor those who are dedicated to the work of Christ. We have to have an honoring environment. And keep in mind, remember, Philippi, the church there, is the healthiest, happiest church. Like, there are no rebukes in this letter, only praises. The word sin does not even show up in this book, not because they're perfect, but because they're moving forward in a positive way, exactly the way they should be. And even in that moment, as good as this church is, Paul reminds them that spiritual maturity leads to an honoring environment. We have to create an honoring environment amongst ourselves if we ever want to achieve spiritual maturity and joy. How many of us here grew up in a home that was anything but honoring? How many of us grew up in a disrespectful, dishonoring type home? You know what I'm saying? Like, kids trash the mom, mom trash the dad trashes everybody. Nobody wants to be in that environment. You know why? Because there's no joy in that environment. Nobody wants to be in a joyless environment. Things like mockery and little pokes and jabs, and when you belittle people and you talk down to people and you're condescending, that's not joy. Nobody wants to be in that environment. See, joy only coexists in honoring environments. Do you know how I know that? Because right now in heaven, there's an environment of honor right now in heaven. Like, the angels in heaven right now are not trash-talking each other. They're showing honor to each other. The angels are showing honor to God. God's showing honor to the angels. The saints that have passed away and gone before us, God is honoring them. He's not bringing up their past and talking trash about them. He's not looking at Noah like, hey, Noah, do you remember that time you got drunk and passed out naked in the tent? Noah's like, God, really? You got to bring that up again? Like, it's been thousands of years. Why you got to bring that up? He's not doing that. It's an honoring environment. And here's the thing. When you choose to create honor in your relationships and honor in the environment that you're in, it brings joy into that. See, an honoring and joyful environment welcomes people. It doesn't repel people away from you. So that's what he's telling us. And Paul's language here, he is honoring to these two men. He is honoring to Timothy. He is honoring to Bob. When he says, there is no one like Timothy, that's honoring language. When he says about Bob that you are my brother, my fellow co-worker, my fellow soldier, That's honoring. See, Timothy and Bob were both faithful people. They were spiritually mature. They were joy-filled people, but their roles in ministry were completely different. You understand that, right? So you got Timothy, who was basically, he had a platform. He was on platform. He was preaching. He was teaching. He was writing letters. He was well-known in the community. And so people just surrounded him and kind of went towards him. He eventually becomes the pastor in the church in Ephesus. I mean, he's well-known. But then Bob is the opposite. See, Bob doesn't necessarily have a platform. Bob's actually more comfortable working behind the scenes. He does the work that no one else wants to do. He's the guy that shows up and cleans up when everybody else is out talking and having fun. But both of them were faithful. Both of them were committed. Both of them were joy-filled, and they were both spiritually mature. And so what we have to do as a church, guys, we have to understand this. We have to honor all of those people who are both visible and even less visible that are doing the work of Christ in the church. Every single week that I come up here, I pour myself into these messages, and I try to be honoring to God in these messages. And inevitably, what will happen is at the end of the service, one or two people will come to me, and they will say, man, that was such a cool message. Thank you for sharing that. And that's not me bragging. That's me saying, hey, thank you. Because that means a world to me. That encourages me. That fills my tank so that I can keep pushing when I pour myself out. But you know who we really should be thanking? The people that are working behind the scenes. Like, we have an entire team of people who serve in kids' ministry. And when they do that, they are sacrificing the opportunity to sit with us and be fed every single week when they're back there. And they do that so that the young parents can come and be fed themselves and to have a break and be able to do that. And they do that out of love and gratitude. Or the people that, like, when we do our midweek connects, they stick around after the Bible study, and they're in the kitchen and they're scrubbing dishes and they're cleaning up, they're taking the trash out. Or the people that show up here, they're first in, last out when we're doing setup. These are the people that, like, they're not even on the schedule this week, but they're going to show up anyway because why not? Let's just go do this. And they serve well. These are the people that we need to be celebrating. These are the people that we need to be thanking. And I'm going to say this. These are the people that we need to find a way to come alongside them and share the burden with them. Share the responsibility of what they're carrying on their shoulders with them. That's how we honor them. That's how we honor each other in the church. So he wraps up, he says, verse 30, for he nearly died for the work of Christ, underlying work of Christ, risking his life to complete what was lacking in your service to me. Now, don't read this as a negative. When he's talking about lacking in your service to me, basically what he's saying is Bob showed up in a big way. He did what no one else could do. He took his gifts, his talents, his availability, and he stepped into a need in a way that no one else had the ability to at that time, and he went above and beyond. And that's what he's saying. So what you got to understand is spiritual maturity, and this is my last point. Spiritual maturity requires sacrifice. You will never grow in your faith if you remain comfortable. Nowhere in the Bible does God ever tell you to be comfortable in your faith. He doesn't want you to stay complacent and comfortable. He wants you to grow. And the only way you're going to grow is to sacrifice. So we have to be willing to, from time to time, make sacrifices together for the church and for his kingdom. So let me wrap up with this question, guys. This is how I want to end this. Let me just ask you this. What is your testimony? What does your testimony say about you? What does your testimony say about your relationship with Jesus? If you were to kind of, I know we don't want to compare ourselves, but if you were to stack yourself up against these two individuals or even more mature Christians that you know, would people describe you as, hey, that person has genuine concern. He's an authentic person. That person's selfless. And they are always thinking of what's in the best needs of the people around them rather than themselves. Are they faithful? Are they dependable? Are they committed? Do they follow through? Are they resilient? Are they always there? Are they honoring to the people around them, or do they kind of talk trash about people? Are they honoring to people with their words and their actions and their attitudes? And do they have the heart of sacrifice? Do they have a sacrificial heart? My prayer this morning is that if that doesn't describe you, that God will move in your life in a way that you will grow into this. And if you don't have people in your life that are like this, I pray that you will find your place in this church and that you will find people who are just like this, who will pour into you, that will come alongside you, that will honor you, and will love you in everything they do. Let me pray for us this morning.